Hello everybody, I hope you're going well. Today I will show you a very important mating idea. So we do have a position that I will actually call a domination. Domination in chess means that you do control everything either on one side of the board or on both sides of the board, or even worse. For example, you do control every piece move that your opponent wants to go for. For example, your opponent wants to play, for example, a pawn move, but you are already guarding the squares which are, uh, going to be controlled by your opponent's pieces. Which means that once you dominate someone, we can already say that you are on a good path to win the game. In that position, for example, it is black's turn to move. I will show you black's move in a second. But in that position, we can just see that white is just dominating the game forever. The king is stuck. The king can't move at all. We do have 1, 2, 3, 4 pieces attacking the king's side. Plus, eventually, if we sacrifice this rook, we might have another rook on the h file. So we do have quite a lot of available moves. I don't want to turn the engine on, but this position is completely lost. So it is black's turn to move. Um, First, it is important to understand what white wants to go for, because when we are talking about domination, we have to know what the ideas are. It's not once there is a domination, the player who has to defend has to understand what are the critical moves that the side dominating will go for. For example, in that position, the king cannot run away, which means that if white goes knight f7, obviously knight f7, it is almost checkmate. Okay, the queen will have to take, then we will take back. But if you have to sacrifice your queen, it usually isn't a good sign. I wouldn't recommend you to count on queen sacrifices to defend your positions. So knight f7 is a problem. So black's moves has to do something with eventually defending the f7 square. Let's say rook f8, because if we take the bishop, knight f7, and the game is lost, we have to give away the queen, and okay, there are two knights and eventually a pawn against a queen, so that is not that good. So let's go back. Of course, the bishop is untakeable. But what happens if, for example, rook f8? What we can see is that we do have a lot of attackers on the king's side, which means that rook f8 doesn't do anything, since we can still go knight f7. And okay, the rook will have to be sacrificed. But okay, after all the trades, we're just up. Actually, we're just up a rook. I'm sorry, up an exchange. But because this is there and this is weak, we can already say that white is just completely winning. There is no reason to doubt about that. So it's difficult to defend the f7 square. Therefore, it's difficult to defend the king. If we go queen g7 to stop, the fact that the king will be cut off, we can still go knight f7. If queen takes, of course, bishop takes, and that's the end. Or queen takes, doesn't matter. So king g8, that was the whole idea. But now, what should we do, or what should we go for with the white pieces? That is pretty simple. Now the queen is getting attacked. The black king can still run away. So if we move, for example, the bishop away, we will just lose the queen. So that is not a good point. So the other question is, what should we go for? Because we have to do something. I see that we have a double check, but the king can just hide on h8, and I'm not sure that we achieved something. The question is, what should we do then in that position if knight f7 isn't winning? Okay, so the problem in that position is that the king can now hide, and the king can potentially run away, because knight f7 won't be good enough for checkmating net, or just to go for a checkmate. And that is why we have to be super duper creative. I see that I do have a lot of attackers on the h7 square, so it's time for me to calculate what happens if knight h7. If knight h7, okay, I can say, okay, for example, queen takes g6, because it is logical to take the free queen. Do I have a checkmate? Okay, knight f6, king g7. No, it seems like I don't have anything. Okay, so I cannot sacrifice my queen. What happens if rook h7? If rook h7, okay, queen takes, because it is check. Okay, I can just take back. And what happens if knight takes? Now I have to think again. What should I do if knight takes? Okay, I see that I still have knight f7, king g8. But now the difference is that the queen isn't getting attacked by the pawn anymore. But, because there is a problem, I would just play the variation. my queen is still getting attacked by the queen, which means that the queen is doing a great job on g7 defending the king side. And okay, if we move the bishop somewhere, it is just one check, so the king can just run away, and it doesn't seem like we have something good enough. Okay, and even if check, the king goes back, it is in the worst scenario for black a draw. I'm sorry, in the worst scenario for white it is a draw, but we already lost half a point. So the question is, what should we go for? Actually, it's difficult to say. Why? Because it is a so-called domination, and once there is a domination, it's difficult to find a final blow immediately. So after queen g7, we have to go for a move that is more or less, better than just primitive checks. Okay, it's time to think. Am I up a piece? Am I down a piece? I'm not down or up anything, but I see that the queen is getting attacked by the queen, and I see that the bishop is getting attacked. So how do we solve that? The move after queen g7 is actually bishop f7. The whole point is that if you take, I would take back with a bishop, and I do have 3 attackers on the f7 square. And if king g7, I might have, actually that's a good question, I might even just go back to f5, and f7 is still hanging, I still have 96 moves, and it's just that h7 is still a weakness, d4 is still a weakness, everything is pinned everywhere, and the threat is, for example, let's say you defend the d4 pawn, I can already just take there, you take back, rook h7, I grab the knight, you grab my knight, I grab the pawn, and I'm just up 2 pawns. So notice that we didn't have any checkmates, even though we were strategically completely winning thanks to the domination. So queen g7 is probably the best move. Of course, there are some other complicated variations, but I don't want to show you variations. What I want to show you is the idea that we can also win without having any final blows. We do see a lot of chess games in which, one of the players started to sacrifice all the pieces to win, and of course it happens, but it's not usual. It is one game out of hundreds. But of course, the move that was played in the game was 95, and now there is a beautiful checkmate. So now it has nothing to do with what I just showed you. Now it is a very brutal checkmate sequence. So pause the video and try to find a winning move. Notice that we do have a lot of attackers on the h7 square. The black king cannot run away because of the bishop and the queen. So the winning move is actually queen f6. Why? Because we have to take back with the black pieces, and now that nobody is guarding the h7 square and the king still cannot run on the g8 square, rook h7 is checkmate. Nice game, nice finishing blow, but notice how one move just decides the outcome of the game. Queen g7, actually that's funny. Knight f7, king g8. The engine recommends to just repeat the moves, but of course it isn't natural. Yeah, so don't do that. Never do that. Of course, you can do that. I'm not here to give you general rules, but it is important to just stay focused and understand why you will the game. Why you will win the game. Thank you very much. If you have any more questions, just let me know in the comment section. I'd be more than happy to answer your questions. See you in the future. Take care.